All right, good evening. Going to do a discussion here about the upcoming weather pattern. Really through the end of January, I think there's a lot to talk about, a lot of interesting features, including a polar vortex that's going to crash over our area tomorrow after this rain comes through. We're then going to see a mild version of what's called a January thaw, and then I think really after the 15-16, it's game on again for winter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the reasons why, and basically show you why there is confidence in this forecast. So right now, to start off, this is the current upper air map. Again, blue and green areas are lower pressure, colder temperatures. Red and yellow are ridges or higher temperatures. So you can basically see ridges or rises in the jet stream. It dips in the jet stream. So this is right now. If you notice, this deep green is a polar vortex. The coldest air in the northern hemisphere is going to be coming over our area tomorrow. You can see that here. Temperatures in single digits, negative air in many areas. But then this is going to swing through. So it gives us a big flash freeze from all this rain, which will probably be pretty dangerous on Tuesday morning with freezing temps. Then watch the warm-up that comes in right here. And this is basically our January thaw. Okay, this is valid the 10th of January. Okay, but then from here, I think things are really going to start to change. So as we go out longer in this period, okay, so there's our thaw. Notice, again, a ridge starts to develop in the west, and again, we see that critical high pressure starting to try to redevelop off of Greenland, and we're starting to try to get more troughing over the east coast. Now, for an east coast storm, you need ridging in the west. You need a lot of moisture, so it's good to have an active subtropical jet stream. You want to see basically a western Atlantic ridge. You want to see blocking over Greenland. And you also want to see what's called a 50-50 low, which is basically a low-pressure area right in eastern Canada. And by the time we get to Friday, January 17th, the setup is starting to look good. And again, this is a forecast. It can change, but I'm going to go into some other factors why I think this projection is pretty accurate. So here's your ridge in the west. Here's your trough developing in the east. There's that western Atlantic ridge. There's that low pressure trying to develop somewhere over Canada. And basically, by the time we get out, let me show you here, by the time we get out, later in the period, it looks like it's going to want to try to phase the two jet streams along the eastern seaboard. Potentially, it brings that ridge up, and we have more of a classic setup. So before I go too far with that, let me show you the reasons behind why I think that can happen. And the first thing I want to talk about is something called organic forecasting. And this is not my idea. This comes from a guy over at AccuWeather who discovered this. It's called the Bering Sea Rule. And basically, in a nutshell, what it says is storms that form in the Bering Sea, which is right over here, and tend to curve to the eastern Bering Sea and up, generally can mean 17 to 21 days later you can see a big storm over the east coast. If the storm's cut more in the western Bering Sea, it's usually an APS runner or a very Great Lakes storm. So going back, so right now I'm taking a look at this period, which is again January 17th, 18th, 19th for storm develop. So going back in the past here, we can see, and I'll show you in a minute, I'll point out where it is. Around the 1st of January, this right here is actually a storm in the Bering Sea. And you can see the low pressure center there actually developed. And it was a moderately strong storm. So that should say 17 to 21 days later, which is the 17th to the 21st, it might be an East Coast storm. But before we just jump on that idea and keep the rule real simple, let's look at what else is going on in the atmosphere. So we already know we have model support at that time for a favorable pattern. Now let's take a look at another weather pattern called the Madden-Julian Oscillation. And basically what this is an area of convection that variates from around the Indian Ocean to the Maritime continent to the Western Pacific and over the Africa region. When you see this convection, and the convection is in blue, okay, move more towards the Pacific, you get a very favorable setup for a trough in the east and a ridge in the west. You can see this is as of December 31st. This has moved more towards the Pacific. And if you look at the latest forecast by the GFS, it's trying to take the MJO into the Western Pacific and into Phase 8 and possibly 1. Now, Phase 8 is a very critical phase for January on the East Coast. This is what Phase 8 looks like in terms of ridging and troughing. So you can see Phase 8 supports a very big ridge in the west, it supports a trough in the east, and it supports blocking Greenland, similar to what you see in the model projection. So as you can see, a lot of things are starting to line up here. And another thing I want to show you with the Bering Sea Rule is take a look at this. So this is current forecasting. So take a look at this storm that's going to develop on Wednesday in the Bering Sea. Hold on. It's going a little slow here. But see if I can get it up here. Look at this, 969 millibar low. Okay, this is a Tuesday. Okay, that's at 42 hours. And look at this. It's going to just curve up into the Alaska region, which is good. So that indicates maybe by the 22nd, 24th, we could see another storm. And again, I want to emphasize, I keep saying this, but the pattern supporting development of storms after the 15th of January. So I want to try to drill that in. So now let's finally go over to what the actual weather models are showing. And this is the GFS model. And usually outside of, say, 180 hours, it's very poor. It's not accurate. The resolution's low. And basically, it's called fantasy land. But let's take you through the week here. So this is basically the rainstorm coming through now on the East Coast. Okay, here comes a frigidly cold air of that polar vortex crashing into the area early Tuesday morning. Again, everything flash freezes. Okay, we're going to probably have a light snow event on Friday. You know, nothing crazy, maybe a few inches if we're lucky, come through. And then here comes the warm-up, and you see red lines indicate warm weather, basically. I don't need to get into details. But now let's go to the period I've been talking about, which is going to be past the 15th. So let's fast forward here past the 15th. Okay, this is January 15th. Again, usually model fantasy land, but I'm showing this because other factors are lining up. So we go here Wednesday the 15th, Thursday, Friday. Take a look at this. So Sunday the 19th, we see a big storm. Okay, this goes along with the other factors I just showed you. So no, this is not guaranteed, but my confidence increases when I see these things line up, like I said. So this is the time period to watch after the 15th, towards the 19th, and then after the 19th, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th. I think we're going to continue to see an active weather pattern. And a lot of this is also supported by the ocean temperatures. This is a very big key in forecasting. Notice there's very warm weather out over the Gulf of Alaska. Okay, that supports a jet stream ridge over that region. That's why we've been having such cold temperatures this year, especially in the central part of the country, because it drives this ridge up and it pulls down the polar air. Okay, this is the El Nino region. Okay, pretty neutral state right now. This is projected to warm up a little bit more in the Nino 3.4 region. A little bit warmer than the Nino 1 region, which is more to the east. That's a positive sign for a cold U.S. winter. And the Atlantic Ocean is warm. I mean, that just helps storms develop and creates a zone between warm and cold air. And you have some warm water up in northwestern Atlantic, which supports blocking over Greenland. So everything's in line. I think this warm-up will be brief. Winter is far from over. This is more of a winter halftime. And you are going to see a second half of January into February. All indicators are we're going to see a pretty active weather pattern. And the third thing, and the last thing I didn't show is the stratosphere, which is basically as high up you can get in the atmosphere, is starting to warm. And when the stratosphere warms, it compresses the lower levels. When you compress air, it gets cold. It lowers heights, creates troughs. And right now, there's a lot of warming starting to develop up in this region. That warms, it compresses the polar vortex, and what the result is, the polar vortex breaks off like you're seeing this week, but usually it's a 1 to 3 week lag. So everything's there. Stratosphere is getting warm. The models are showing it. The MGO is in the right phase. And finally, the Bering Sea rule looks good as well. So keep checking in. I just wanted to do a big overall pattern update. I'll post a few graphics along with this, but we have a lot to follow. So enjoy the warm weather while you can, then we'll get back to some action. Thanks for checking in.